Beautiful. So we have our basic return. Everything looks great. Now we just need to apply some styles. And technically you can say, okay, so we can go to index.css or whatever the CSS file and then just add all the styles. But as our project grows bigger, it's going to be very hard to sustain that. You'll have to come up with unique class names. You'll have to manage 1,000 lines of code of CSS in one file. And essentially, it just becomes a pain. So in order to solve that, I use CSS in JS, more specifically styled components. And the reason why I like styled components, for one, I can have the logic and styles in the same component. Now, we're not going to do that in this project simply because I wanted to transfer the styles from my final project to the one that we're working on. But normally that is my setup where everything is effectively in one file. Using styled components also allows me to have no name collisions, and I'll show you how's that possible. And if I want, I can apply some JavaScript logic as well. Now, this is just basic setup of styled components that we're going to use in this project. So if you want to find out more info, you can always navigate to styled components docs. And I also have a 3-hour course where I cover way more interesting things about styled components. So if you're interested in styled components, you can definitely check it out. Now, in order to get up and running with styled components, first what we need to do is install them. And this is going to be the command. So let me open up my terminal. I'll stop it here. I'll paste the command. And now we're installing styled components. And the way we set up styled components, we import styled, which is a default import. So technically you can name it differently, but a common convention is calling this styled. And then we come up with a name that the style component is going to have, and we set it equal to styled and whatever HTML element. And I'll show you that in a moment in the app.js. Now I want to spin up back my application. So we're going to go with npm start. I'll close the terminal. And effectively, let's go back to app.js here. Let's go for import styled from styled components, like so. And then let's set up a button, for example. So come up with the name of the component you're going to create. So notice how we don't need to use React in this case. We right away just use styled components, and under the hood, it's going to set it up as a React component. Then we need to go with the styled. That's the import dot, and then whatever HTML element you want to use. So if I want to use div, I go with div. If I want to go with section, I go with section. But since I named it already button, it kind of makes sense. If I'm going to go with HTML element by the name of button. And then we go with tag template literals, which are not unique to styled components. If you have used Gatsby, for example, you know that they use that to set up the queries. So this is a JavaScript feature. And the way styled components implement that, whatever styles we place here will be applied to this button. So for example, if I'm going to go here with background, and we're going to go with background red, pretty typical example, color, and let's just set it up as white, font size, and then 1 rem. If I'll go here, and in my case, I'm going to place it above the heading 1, and if I'll render my button component, and let's just say here, click me, what you'll notice that there is a button, more specifically with a red background and color of white. Now, before we continue, let me just mention that I'm also using the extension for styled components, which allows me to see the CSS in different colors. Basically, values are different color than the actual property. And also, if there's some kind of bug, it actually right away yells at me. Now, the extension you're looking for is this one. So let's go over here, and you're looking for this VS Code styled components. That's the one that adds the syntax highlighting as well as yells at you when you have bugs. So if you do decide to use styled components, meaning in your own project and all that, I highly suggest installing that extension as well. And let me just take a look at my README, what I wanted to cover. So there's no name collisions since unique class. And let me showcase that. So I'm going to navigate to a bigger screen, and we're going to look for localhost 3000. And then if I do the inspect, what you'll notice here is the class, but notice this unique class name. Now, what this allows us is to pretty much use the style components all throughout our project, and we don't need to worry about the classes that we have. What's really cool is that it also applies to styled components when we apply to entire component. So at the moment, we're looking at one flavor, where basically we're creating right away a styled component and we just add the styles. But also what we can do, we can wrap our React component in the styled component, which I'm going to show you in a second. And by doing so, we can actually use classes inside of this styled component. And then we still don't have these name collisions because the parent one, the parent styled component, will have that unique class. So if I'm going to create another styled component here, so let me copy and paste, and I'll say here button second, and then maybe this one will be blue. And then let me copy and paste, and let's just say button second. What you'll notice once you navigate to the big screen, that the classes are not the same, which again, just allows us to not be that original with our classes inside of the components, the styled components. Again, this is pretty much a basic overview of styled components. In the next video, I'll show you how we can wrap the entire React component. And if you want to find out more info about styled components, basically if you want to use them for your own project, then a good starting point is styled components docs, as well as the course that I mentioned previously.